Over the years, thousands of public complaints and inspection reports have raised concerns about certain fish and chips restaurants people eat at every day. When you line up customer reviews, health code violations, and employee reports, clear patterns start to emerge. This video breaks down 9 fish and chips restaurants you should seriously avoid based on repeated issues documented online. We're not guessing, and we're not speculating. Everything discussed is drawn from publicly available complaints and records. You'll see what customers are consistently reporting, why those complaints matter, and what they suggest about food handling and safety. Along the way, we'll also point out 2 fish and chips restaurants that stand out for better practices, so you're not left guessing where to go instead. And by the end of this video, you'll know which fish and chips restaurants to avoid, which ones are safer, and how to make better choices next time you order. 9. Long John Silver's. Long John Silver's is familiar to a lot of people. It's been around for decades. It specializes in fried seafood, and for many customers it feels like a predictable option for fish and chips. That long history creates trust, especially for people who assume a chain. This established must have its food safety systems under control. However, when public complaints and inspection records are examined together, a different pattern starts to appear. One of the most common issues mentioned in customer reviews is oil quality. Many diners describe fish that taste overly greasy, bitter, or stale. Food safety specialists often associate these descriptions with frying oil that is reused too long or not properly filtered. While oil reuse is standard practice in fast food kitchens, the concern raised repeatedly is inconsistency. Some locations appear to manage oil far better than others. Health inspection records reinforce this concern. Over the years, multiple Long John Silver's locations have received citations for issues such as improper food holding temperatures, sanitation lapses, and inadequate cleaning of food contact surfaces. These findings are not rumors or opinions. They are publicly documented reports from local health departments. What raises concern is not a single violation, but similar violations appearing across different locations. Employee reviews provide additional context. Former workers frequently mention understaffing during busy hours, rushed food preparation, and pressure to keep orders moving quickly. In a deep frying environment, that combination increases the likelihood of shortcuts, especially when it comes to oil maintenance and temperature control. Customer illness complaints also appear often enough to stand out. Reviews describing nausea or stomach discomfort within hours of eating follow similar timelines and symptoms. Individually, these reports don't prove cause and effect. Collectively, they suggest a pattern that customers should take seriously. This does not mean every Long John Silver's location is unsafe. Many operate without major issues, but the volume and consistency of complaints and inspection citations place it on this list as a restaurant people may want to think twice about, especially without checking recent inspection results for their local location. If this feels concerning, the next entry shows a brand where similar complaints appear even more frequently. 8. Captain D's. Captain D's presents itself as a straightforward seafood chain. It focuses almost entirely on fish-based meals, which leads many customers to assume that seafood handling and preparation are core strengths. For a lot of people, that specialization builds confidence. If fish is all you do, you should be good at it. But when you review public complaints and inspection data, Captain D's shows several recurring issues that place it on this list. A frequent theme in customer reviews is inconsistent food quality. Many diners report fish that arrives undercooked on one visit and overly greasy on another. Others mention a strong oil smell or taste that lingers, which is often associated with oil that hasn't been changed or filtered on schedule. These complaints appear across multiple states and locations, suggesting it's not limited to one isolated restaurant. Health inspection records add weight to these concerns. Various Captain D's locations have been cited over the years for violations including improper food holding temperatures, inadequate hand washing practices, and issues with cleaning food contact surfaces. As with other large chains, not every location has problems, but repeated citations across different franchises point to uneven enforcement of safety standards. Employee reviews help explain why this inconsistency may exist. Former staff members often describe high turnover, minimal training, and pressure to work quickly during peak hours. Several reviews mention being responsible for multiple stations at once, which can increase the likelihood of skipped steps in food handling or fryer maintenance. Another issue that appears repeatedly in customer feedback is portion quality versus appearance. Some customers report thick batter hiding very small pieces of fish, raising questions about product sourcing and value. While not a safety violation on its own, it contributes to overall dissatisfaction and distrust. As with other chains on this list, reports of stomach discomfort appear in reviews often enough to be noticeable. These complaints tend to describe similar timing and symptoms, which is why they stand out when viewed collectively rather than individually. Captain D's isn't included here because of one bad incident. It appears because of patterns. Patterns in complaints, inspection findings, and employee experiences that repeat across locations. And after seeing a seafood-focused chain struggle with consistency, it raises an important question. What happens when fish and chips aren't even the main focus of the restaurant? That's exactly what comes up. 7. Arthur Treacher's Fish and Chips. Arthur Treacher's Fish and Chips carries a strong sense of nostalgia. For many customers, it's remembered as a classic fish and chips destination, tied to earlier decades when the brand was far more widespread. That legacy often creates goodwill, with people expecting the same standards they remember from the past. But when you compare that reputation to modern complaints and inspection feedback, a gap starts to appear. One of the most common issues raised in recent reviews is dated operations. Customers frequently mention older-looking kitchens, worn equipment, and inconsistent food quality. While an old-fashioned style isn't inherently unsafe, aging fryers and prep equipment require stricter maintenance to meet modern food safety standards, and complaints suggest that doesn't always happen. Oil quality, again, appears as a recurring theme. Reviews describe fish that tastes overly heavy, greasy, or unevenly fried. These descriptions often point to oil that's either degraded or not maintained at consistent temperatures. In fish-focused restaurants, oil condition plays a major role in both taste and safety, which is why repeated complaints stand out. Health inspection data from various locations over the years has included citations for issues such as improper food storage, sanitation lapses, and cleaning deficiencies. As with other chains, not every location shows problems, but the repetition of similar violations across different inspections raises concern. Employee feedback, though more limited due to fewer locations, also highlights staffing challenges. Some former workers mention minimal training and being expected to manage multiple tasks at once, especially during busy periods. In environments built around deep frying, rushed workflows can increase the likelihood of skipped safety steps. Customer illness complaints appear less frequently than with some larger chains, but they still surface often enough to be noticeable. Reports of stomach discomfort or nausea tend to follow similar timeframes, which is why they're worth noting when reviewing overall patterns. Arthur Treacher's ends up on this list not because of its history, but because of its present-day consistency issues. A brand built on tradition still needs to meet modern standards, and according to public feedback, that doesn't always happen. After this point in the list, we'll pause to talk about what actually performs better, because not all fish and chips restaurants show these same patterns. Safer. Alternative 2. Culver's. When reviewing public complaints and inspection records, Culver's stands out as a fish-serving chain that consistently shows fewer seafood-related red flags compared to many traditional fish and chips restaurants. One of the key differences is transparency and consistency. Across multiple locations, Culver's generally maintains solid health inspection results, with fewer repeat violations tied specifically to fish handling, oil quality, or sanitation. While no large chain is perfect, the pattern of complaints is notably lighter and less severe. Customer reviews also tend to focus more on consistency rather than extremes. Instead of frequent reports of greasy oil, off-tasting fish, or illness, feedback more often mentions predictable quality and clean dining areas. That stability is important when assessing risk over time. Another factor is menu structure. Culver's does serve fish, but it isn't the sole focus of the kitchen. Their operations are built around standardized procedures, regular equipment maintenance, and structured staff training. That tends to reduce the variability that shows up so often in complaint-heavy fish-only operations. Culver's also provides clearer allergen information than many standalone fish and chip shops, which lowers risk for customers with sensitivities and contributes to better overall food handling practices. This doesn't mean Culver's is perfect or that every location is identical, but when comparing public records side by side, it consistently performs better than many of the restaurants appearing on this list, which is why it's included here as a safer alternative. Now, with that benchmark in mind, let's go back to the countdown, because the next restaurant shows a sharp increase in complaint volume and inspection concerns. 6. H. Salt fish and chips. H. Salt fish and chips is often seen as a straightforward, old-school fish and chips chain. The branding leans heavily on tradition, simplicity, and the idea of classic preparation. For many customers, that creates an assumption of reliability, fewer frills, fewer problems. But public complaints and inspection-related feedback suggest the reality can be more uneven. A recurring issue in customer reviews is fish quality and texture. Many diners describe fish that feels overly soft, mushy, or inconsistent from visit to visit. These complaints often lead to questions about whether the fish is previously frozen, how long it has been stored, and how it is thawed before cooking. While frozen fish is not unsafe by default, improper thawing and refreezing can significantly affect both quality and safety. Another frequent theme involves oil condition. Reviews commonly mention fish and chips that feel excessively heavy or greasy, with a lingering aftertaste. In deep fry operations, this is often associated with oil that has degraded or is not being filtered and replaced on schedule. As with other chains on this list, the problem appears to vary widely by location, suggesting inconsistent operational standards. Inspection records at various locations over the years have included citations related to sanitation and equipment maintenance. Some reports reference issues such as build-up on food contact surfaces, inadequate cleaning procedures, or temperature control concerns. These are not universal findings, but they appear often enough across different locations to form a recognizable pattern. Employee feedback provides additional context. Former staff members have described limited training, particularly around fryer maintenance and fish handling. Several reviews mention being expected to manage multiple stations during busy periods, which can increase the likelihood of rushed preparation and overlook safety steps. Customer illness complaints appear sporadically but consistently. Reviews describing stomach discomfort or nausea tend to follow similar timelines, which is why they stand out when reviewing feedback in aggregate rather than as isolated incidents. H. Salt fish and chips is included on this list not because of a single major scandal, but because of repeated smaller warning signs, quality complaints, sanitation concerns, and inconsistency across locations. For customers who don't regularly check inspection scores, that inconsistency can make the experience unpredictable. And as we move closer to the top of this list, the next entry highlights a category where complaint volume rises sharply and where many people don't expect problems at all. 5. Local fish and chips chains. Local chains often benefit from a reputation boost. They're not national brands. They feel more personal, and many customers assume that smaller operations automatically mean fresher food and better care. In some cases, that's true. But when local fish and chips chains begin to expand to multiple locations, new risks often appear. Public health inspection records show that certain regional fish and chips chains accumulate repeat violations across multiple locations. These aren't one-time paperwork issues. They often involve food holding temperatures, improper storage of raw fish, sanitation lapses, and cleaning failures around fryers and prep surfaces. What makes these cases stand out is repetition. When the same types of violations show up inspection after inspection, regulators typically note them as corrected on site, allowing the restaurant to remain open. To customers, that correction is invisible. The doors stay open, the menu stays the same, and nothing signals that problems were ever found. Customer reviews frequently echo these inspection findings. Diners report inconsistent quality, fish that tastes off on certain days, and oil that feels noticeably heavier than expected. In some cases, reviews mention visiting one location that seemed fine, followed by another under the same brand that felt noticeably worse. That inconsistency is often tied to uneven training and oversight as chains grow. Employee reviews help explain how this happens. Former staff members sometimes describe limited food safety training, outdated equipment, and pressure to keep costs down. When margins are tight, oil changes, equipment upgrades, and additional staff hours are often the first things delayed. Illness complaints also appear more frequently in these cases. While no single review proves causation, clusters of similar complaints, especially when tied to the same brand name across different locations, raise red flags for consumer advocates. Quick pause here. If this breakdown is helping you understand what to look for, tap like and subscribe. The next entries move into environments where complaints rise even faster and the risks are often underestimated. Local chains can still be good, but only when they grow responsibly. When expansion outpaces oversight, the warning signs often show up first in inspections and reviews. And coming up next is a category where people expect speed and convenience, but not the volume of complaints that keep appearing. 4. Golden Corral. Golden Corral isn't marketed as a fish and chips restaurant, but it appears on this list because of repeated complaint patterns tied specifically to buffet-style fish and fried seafood. The core issue here is time and temperature control. Buffet operations rely on food sitting out for extended periods, and fish is one of the most sensitive proteins when it comes to holding safety. Public inspection reports from various locations over the years have cited issues related to hot food not being maintained at proper temperatures, along with sanitation concerns around shared serving utensils and buffet lines. Customer reviews reinforce these findings. A common complaint involves fish that appears dried out, lukewarm, or unevenly cooked. Others mention strong odors, soggy batter, or fish that tastes off, which are all warning signs when fried seafood sits too long before being consumed. Another recurring issue is cross-contamination risk. Buffets use shared utensils, shared trays, and high customer traffic. Reviews frequently mention children handling serving tools, food being dropped back into trays, and staff struggling to keep up with cleaning during peak hours. While these issues affect many buffet foods, fish is particularly vulnerable because of how quickly it can spoil if mishandled. Employee reviews add further context. Former staff members often describe being responsible for monitoring multiple buffet stations at once, especially during busy meal periods. When staffing is stretched thin, food rotation and temperature checks can fall behind, something inspectors regularly flag in buffet environments. Illness complaints also show up more frequently in buffet-related reviews than in made-to-order restaurants. Customers reporting stomach discomfort or nausea often describe eating fish or fried seafood shortly before symptoms began. Again, no single complaint proves cause, but clusters of similar reports over time are what place buffet fish fry offerings on this list. Golden Corral locations vary, and not every restaurant shows the same problems. But when you combine inspection history, customer feedback, and the inherent risks of buffet-style seafood, this becomes a place many food safety experts recommend approaching with caution, especially when choosing fried fish. And next, we move into a setting people rarely question at all, yet complaint data suggests it may deserve far more scrutiny. 3. Mall food court. Fish and chips vendors. Mall food court fish and chip spots often feel harmless. They're convenient, visible, and surrounded by other food options, which gives the impression of oversight and safety. Many people assume that if a restaurant operates inside a mall, it must be closely regulated. Public complaints and inspection data suggest that assumption doesn't always hold up. One of the most common issues tied to food court fish and chips vendors is shared infrastructure. Fryers, prep surfaces, storage areas, and even refrigeration are often shared or placed very close to other vendors. Health inspection reports have repeatedly flagged cross-contamination risks, especially when raw fish is handled near other foods without adequate separation. Customer reviews frequently mention inconsistent quality. Fish that is hot and crisp one visit may be soggy or lukewarm the next. Many diners report excessively greasy food, which can indicate oil that isn't being changed or filtered often enough. A common issue in high-volume food court settings where speed is prioritized over maintenance. Another recurring theme is staffing and training. Food court vendors typically experience very high employee turnover. Employee reviews and consumer complaints often describe workers rotating between different stations or vendors with minimal specialized training. When staff are unfamiliar with proper fish handling or fryer management, mistakes become more likely. Illness complaints appear often enough to stand out. Reviews describing stomach discomfort, nausea, or digestive issues frequently mention food court fish as the suspected source. While these reports can't prove causation on their own, the similarity in timing and symptoms across unrelated customers raises concern when viewed collectively. Inspection records also show that violations in food courts are sometimes addressed vendor by vendor rather than holistically. That means one operation correcting an issue doesn't always prevent problems from spreading if shared areas remain inadequately managed. Mall food courts aren't automatically unsafe. Many vendors operate responsibly, but the combination of shared spaces, rushed preparation, and inconsistent oversight places fish and chips counters in this environment at higher risk compared to dedicated, made-to-order restaurants. And as concerning as this may sound, the next entry involves switching to a safe option. Safer alternative: legal seafoods. When reviewing public inspection records, consumer complaints, and food safety reporting, legal seafoods consistently stands out as a stronger performer compared to many fish and chips restaurants on this list. One of the biggest differences is documented sourcing transparency. Legal seafoods publicly discloses where its seafood comes from and has a long-standing reputation for working directly with suppliers. That shortens the supply chain and reduces many of the quality and handling issues that show up repeatedly in complaint-heavy restaurants. Inspection history is another key factor. Across locations, legal seafoods generally shows fewer repeat health code violations, particularly around temperature control, sanitation, and food contact surfaces. When issues are cited, follow-up inspections often show documented corrections rather than the same problems reappearing. Customer reviews also follow a different pattern. Instead of frequent reports of greasy oil, off-tasting fish, or illness, feedback tends to focus on consistency and freshness. While complaints do exist, no restaurant is immune. They are far less concentrated around food safety concerns. Employee reviews reinforce this distinction. Former staff members often describe structured training, clearer procedures, and stricter standards around seafood handling. That kind of internal consistency usually translates into fewer external complaints. Legal seafoods is not included here as an endorsement, but as a data-backed comparison point. When the same criteria, complaints, inspections, and employee feedback are applied evenly, it shows noticeably fewer red flags than many fish and chips-focused operations. With that second safer option established, we can now return to the countdown, because the top two entries involve places people rarely question, yet complaint data suggests they should. 2. Tourist area. Fish and chips restaurants. Fish and chip spots in busy tourist areas often look appealing. They're usually well located, heavily advertised, and designed to catch the attention of people looking for a quick, local-style meal. For many visitors, these restaurants feel like a safe bet. Busy storefronts suggest popularity, and popularity is often mistaken for quality. But public complaints and review patterns tell a more cautious story. One of the most consistent issues reported is volume over quality. Tourist area fish and chips restaurants often operate at extremely high volume during peak seasons. Customer reviews frequently mention rushed service, unevenly cooked fish, and batter that feels soggy or overly greasy. These are common signs of fryers being pushed beyond capacity and oil not being maintained properly during long service hours. Another recurring concern is frozen and imported fish sold as local or fresh. Reviews and consumer comments often note disappointment after learning, sometimes after asking staff, that the fish is not locally sourced despite marketing that strongly implies it is. While selling frozen fish is legal, misleading presentation contributes to distrust and repeated complaints. Health inspection data from tourist-heavy areas also shows patterns of seasonal staffing problems. Temporary or short-term staff are often hired quickly with minimal training. Employee reviews and inspection notes sometimes reference food handling mistakes, missed temperature checks, and sanitation issues during peak periods. Illness complaints appear frequently enough to stand out. Reviews describing stomach discomfort or nausea often mention visiting during especially busy hours. When similar complaints repeat year after year in the same areas, food safety analysts pay closer attention. Tourist area fish and chips restaurants are not all unsafe, and some are excellent. But when a business relies heavily on one-time visitors rather than repeat local customers, the incentive to maintain long-term consistency can weaken. That's why this category ranks so high on the list. And now, we've reached the final entry, the one most people overlook completely, despite complaint data that places it at the very top. 1. Gas station adjacent fish and chips counters. This is the one most people don't expect to see at the top of the list. And that's exactly why it's here. Fish and chips counters attached to or located inside gas stations consistently generate some of the highest volumes of food safety complaints relative to how often people eat there. Convenience plays a huge role. Drivers stop for fuel, see hot food available, and assume it's no different from a small takeaway. Public complaints and inspection records suggest otherwise. One of the biggest issues is oversight. Gas station food operations are often secondary to the main business. Reviews and inspection reports frequently cite sanitation problems, improper food storage, and inadequate separation between raw ingredients and ready-to-eat food. In some cases, the same staff are responsible for both food prep and non-food duties, increasing cross-contamination risk. Oil quality is another major concern. Customer reviews often describe fish that tastes burnt, excessively greasy, or stale. In smaller operations with limited staff, oil maintenance and filtration are frequently delayed, especially during busy hours. Deep frying fish without strict oil management quickly degrades both quality and safety. Temperature control issues appear repeatedly in inspection data. Reports have cited hot food not being held at safe temperatures and refrigeration units struggling to maintain proper cooling. Fish is particularly sensitive to temperature fluctuations, which is why these violations are taken seriously by inspectors. Illness complaints are more concentrated here than in almost any other category on the list. Reviews describing nausea, stomach cramps, or digestive illness often reference gas station food and follow similar timelines. Individually, these reports can be dismissed. Collectively, they form a pattern that consumer safety advocates consistently flag. Employee feedback, when available, paints a similar picture. Workers often describe minimal food safety training, outdated equipment, and pressure to manage multiple roles at once. In that environment, consistent food handling standards are difficult to maintain. Gas station adjacent fish and chips counters aren't all unsafe, but the combination of limited oversight, inconsistent training, and high complaint density places them at the top of this list. If there's one place where checking inspection records, or choosing to eat elsewhere, matters most, it's here. That completes the countdown. After reviewing all 9 entries, the key takeaway is simple. This isn't about panic, it's about patterns. When public complaints, inspection reports, and customer experiences are viewed together, the same issues show up repeatedly at certain fish and chips restaurants. Poor oil quality, inconsistent food handling, temperature problems, and lack of transparency are the most common red flags. Most customers never see this information because it's scattered across databases and reviews. This video brings those pieces together so you can make more informed decisions. The good news is that safer options do exist. The 2 alternatives we mentioned consistently show fewer complaints and better inspection histories, which is exactly what to look for when choosing where to eat. Before ordering fish and chips, take a moment to check recent inspection scores, read beyond the star rating, and pay attention to repeated complaints, not just isolated ones. If you've had experiences at any of the places mentioned, share them in the comments. That kind of feedback helps others spot patterns faster. If this video was useful, consider sharing it with friends or family and subscribing for more breakdowns like this. Smarter choices start with better information.